You got them? Ready to plant some stuff?
Yeah.
Is it bright out here?
Yeah.
Benjamin and I were just talking. We were talking about maybe going to the zoo. He wanted to know if they have a petting zoo. What kind of animals could you hope to pet at a petting zoo?
Giraffe.
A giraffe. Okay, well that would be something to look forward to. My kids have had goats and alpacas and like all kinds of stuff like that for most of their life, but they still get very excited about a petting zoo. I'm gonna set the sprinkler up out here and then we'll head down to the high tunnel and plant that garlic or that ginger, okay? I made a post on Instagram yesterday because I came out here yesterday evening and I'd been moving my sprinklers around and watering, and I was standing there watching the oscillating sprinkler just water from overhead my garden. And I've been telling everyone for years to water at the soil because it's ideal. It is ideal to water your garden directly at the soil with drip tape, soaker hoses, or if you're watering, just pouring it directly on the soil rather than over the foliage of the plants. Because when you put on the foliage, when the foliage is all wet, especially if it's hot and humid, that just makes the perfect breeding ground for fungus and bacteria. And a lot of diseases in a plant can come from fungus and bacteria. So,
Humongous fungus.
Ben said a humongous fungus. We were reading about the largest life form on Earth is actually a humongous fungus. Anyway, and as I was watching the water fall down on my foliage, making the perfect breeding ground for fungus and bacteria and disease, I just made this post because I wasn't willing to set up my irrigation when I wasn't sure what the layout of my beds was going to be. It just doesn't make sense to try to run a bunch of drip tape and then decide we wanted to change it. So I didn't make any real effort to do that for this growing season. Once we get like the potager built, we kind of have a good idea of what it's all going to look like. We'll move forward into putting irrigation and watering at the soil. We ran the lines, like the water lines to each place. So we have like the places they stub off. It didn't make sense for me to do that. And the main thing I wanted to share in this whole thought is that, yeah, there are ideal ways to garden, but if you can't do the ideal way, like garden anyway, it's definitely worth it to do a good enough way. And perfection can so be the enemy of good enough. I would argue that an imperfect garden is better than one that you don't plant at all because you're so concerned about getting it exactly right. So I'm about to go set up my sprinklers, my unideal watering system. Out here in the cottage garden. I have just been going step by step from each place. It is what it is. The garden's getting water. If I don't give it water, it dries up and dies. That's definitely not ideal.
Can you turn it on?
I haven't yet. You want to go turn the faucet on? Give me just a second, okay? Let me make sure this is plugged in first. All right, I'm gonna get my camera out of the way. Hold on.
Can I do it?
Yep, go ahead, do it. There's over there about to get sprayed. So since I am watering with sprinklers, since that's not ideal, I definitely don't want to water shallow more frequently because essentially if I were to put this on for like 10 minutes, the garden would look pretty watered, but then I am soaking that foliage, making the ideal place for disease, and then the soil is not deeply soaked. So I put these sprinklers on and I leave them for a while. I mean, I am watering off a well, a very deep well with very high pressure. So that gives me the luxury of not having to be super cautious about my usage, maybe as much as you would if you were in town. You left the ginger in the greenhouse? Okay, well, wait till it comes all the way over, and then whenever it goes back, run in there. Don't go too fast because I don't want you to slip, okay? No, wait. I'll tell you when to go. Come.
I don't like it.
You don't like it? I'll go. But I would say it's probably best if you're trying to water your garden space overhead with a sprinkler to really give it at least like 30 minutes of pretty steady watering. If you're ever confused or unsure if you how much water actually got on your garden. Definitely move the soil away, go down a few inches, and make sure that it's soaked down a few inches. It's very easy to accidentally underwater your garden because you pour the water on, you think that looks wet, but if you stick your finger down and it's dry an inch down, you definitely want a deeper watering than that. And it is better, if at all possible, to do really deep waterings maybe every few days rather than a very shallow watering every day, because again, you're introducing the perfect set of circumstances for bacteria to grow. So I watered all of this really deeply yesterday, and since it is also mulch, which really helps keep your water in and make the most of your watering, keeps the evaporation down, this won't need to be watered today, even though it's going to be a very hot day. All of these plants I have sitting in bottom trays of water because of the heat. The shade cloth will help in here with plants not drying out as quickly. I'm sitting on the edge of this garden bed, and let me tell you, it is not wide. Not nearly as wide as my tail is. All right, let's talk about growing ginger. I got these bags of ginger at the grocery store. This is just organic ginger root. They weren't in great shape. They were like starting to get a little bit shrivelly, and therefore they were on sale. So I paid $2.99 per bag, and each bag is about 1.5 pounds. So that being the case, I'm gonna get to plant a lot of ginger for $6, which is really great. Here I've just dumped these all out. You can see they kind of like got a little bit of discoloring. Maybe it's a little moldy-ish. Not really mold so much. It's just, they're just starting to go bad. They're shriveled up. So that might be a deterrent from somebody wanting to eat this. I would probably just cut the yucky parts off and use it anyway. But I bought it to plant. So as you can see here with this ginger, it's got little spots that are starting to sprout. These little growth nubs, and ideally I would have done what I'm doing here a couple of days ago and laid these out and let them callus. If you are doing something like planting potatoes or ginger or some other root, if you cut it up in pieces or break it in pieces and lay it out for like 2 days, it essentially grows like a hard callus skin, kind of like what happened here with this one. I'm gonna plant them anyway. It'll probably be fine. It's so warm right now that these little growth nodules that are already happening are just going to take off. The concern is if they're not callous, that they might rot in the ground before they have a chance to really start growing. I don't really feel like that's much of a concern right now. So you want your pieces to be about a couple of inches. You don't, I mean, you could take a big like this and put it in the ground, but you're not going to get as much of a harvest, because when you take a little piece like this, it's going to grow from there and get bigger. If you take a bigger piece, it's like crowding plants. Like basically if you plant plants too close together, they don't get as big, therefore they don't produce as much. So right now I'm just trying to separate my plants further. So I'm going to break these into pieces. I'd like to see on each piece at least one place that's starting to sprout, just to make sure. Now you can do this ahead of time. Like you can start this in your house. You can put it in a tray and get it growing before you move it outside. If you live in a place with a short season, you would probably want to do that because ginger does take a long time. Now, from what I understand, when I've grown this in the past, I've always really rushed to get it harvested before a freeze. But I have since learned, I've been told, that a mild frost might kill back the tops a little bit, but it doesn't actually hurt the roots, which is what you're harvesting. I'm going to put this in my high tunnel because I think it would be really cool if I could overwinter this and treat it more like a perennial and maybe harvest it as I need it. I don't know for sure if that's gonna work, but I'm gonna try. If you are in a cold place and you're kind of following along with me, ginger is a really great thing you can grow in a pot. So you could take little bits like this and put it in a pot, leave it outside, and then when it starts getting cold, move it inside your house and grow it, you know, by a window. You could put it under a grow light. I don't know that that would even be necessary. It'd probably be fine putting it by a window, and grow it over winter in a pot. And I think from what I understand, a lot of people who do live in cooler climates do grow their ginger in containers so that they can move them in and out. There's a pretty good little bit that's already started growing right there. Now I think ginger's one of those things that some people will blow off growing because they're like, I don't really use a lot of that. For cooking, we don't love doing like stir fries, and we raise pigs and we'll have like ground pork, just plain ground pork from our mangalitas, and brown that, and then add some grated fresh ginger and coconut aminos and maybe some honey and like lime juice, and make sort of like this really Asian flavored ground meat, and then eat that with some like something pickled. Like you can get some, whatever it is, if you got cucumbers or carrots or whatever, quick pickle them, and serve that over rice, maybe with some like roasted broccoli. That's a pretty go-to dinner staple for us, is a meal like that. So I would say that's where, in food-wise, I use the most fresh ginger. Of course, there's baking dishes that you can use fresh ginger in. There are a lot of places you can use it, even if it's not something you use a lot. Now, if you make kombucha, ginger's a really great thing to put in on the second ferment. And the real reason why I'm growing it, one, fresh ginger is so good. It is so much more flavorful and bright than store-bought ginger, just because, by the time it comes to you in the store, you don't really know how old that is, but being able to pull it out of the ground and use it like very quickly, oh, it's so good. But ginger got a lot of very positive medicinal properties. It's very anti-inflammatory. And so I put fresh ginger in fire cider, in elderberry syrup. Like, I'll cook some ginger down in that. It's very good for medicinal uses and to support your immune system, and also, just fight inflammation in your body. So I'm planting a good deal of this because I'll use a lot of it. Again, I am also going to try to see if I can maybe treating this more perennial in the high tunnel. I remember talking to some people that said that they let theirs go, because they lived in Texas, and they let theirs go through the winter. The Naked Gardeners actually is their channel, and they came to my house in Arkansas, and they were talking about how they had ginger that had been going for a long time. They lived in Texas, which is a very similar climate to where I am now. So I'm hoping maybe that'll work. I don't really know. It's June right now. I have a long season, so my frost doesn't come until November. So at the very least, I think I'll get a good harvest off this, just growing it normally. My plan here is to fill this whole back row in the high tunnel with this ginger. Ginger is going to get pretty tall, and with it getting super tall, I don't really want to just plant it super heavily on the side here, because I really want my high tunnel to vent very well. So being that this is going to be real tall and thick, it could block off half of my airflow here, and I don't want to do that, because when it's 105 degrees outside, I don't want to risk this not having as much airflow as possible. So all I'm going to do here is plant these about 6 inches apart and a couple inches down, maybe like 2 and maybe 3 inches. Obviously, I'm not going to be super perfectionist about this. I'm just going to get it in the ground, and I think that it will do just fine. So, and plant this whole area with ginger. Well, that didn't actually stretch as far as I thought it would, but I have a little bit more ginger in the house that I bought to use that wasn't part of that clearance stuff. I just marked where I ended with a couple pieces of mulch. I leave little markers like this for myself all over the garden. Anyway, I made it most of the row here. I got a little bit of space. I'm probably going to go grab that good ginger I have that's not older and plant it over here, just so I can fill out the whole row. But as of right now, I'm going to grab the sprinkler and set it on here and water this in real well. Sprinkler set up in the middle. I've got it set so it won't have a wide arc. It'll just go straight up and water that bed well. And I'm going to run that for about probably 20 or 30 minutes and let this bed get super soaked. Bear, did you get in the water? I'm going to get a lot of food out of that little non-ideal situation, which makes me feel really good. In my garden tour the other day, I just so happened to catch the newly hatched killdeer, and when I came out here later that evening they had already fledged and ran off with Mama. I was so glad that I saw them because I think I would have been a little heartbroken had I come out and them just been gone. Like the eggs, I'd been watching them for weeks, and for them to just be gone, I think I would have worried that something happened to them. So that was a really sweet thing to get to see them on that garden tour and wish them a happy birthday before they ran off. I'm sure that in coming years they'll be the ones shouting at me during my gardening season. There are a lot of killdeer out in this field. So thank you guys for hanging out with me today, getting that planted. Maybe you can grab a couple little ginger rhizomes at the grocery store and stick them in a pot or something, or give them a little space in a bed and have yourself some fresh ginger. You can buy ginger rhizomes at like some seed companies and stuff, but I don't think it makes a difference. And you know, buying organic ones at the store, you can grow those just the same. Thank you guys for hanging out with me. I bless you. Until next time.